You're listening to a Roddenberry Podcast.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. We'll have more news this evening, but first...
The latest Gene-ology, a Roddenberry Podcast.
Episode 94, V Victor 5. Welcome to Mission Log Gene-ology. I'm Earl Green.
And I'm Ashley Thomas.
Each week on Gene-ology, we dive into the amazing true story of Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry, exploring his adventures in writing for TV in the years before he set sail on the final frontier.
And in each installment, we're seeking the morals, meanings, and messages that were always present in most of his best work. This week, Gene's first foray into a type of programming that resembles something we now know as true crime.
But before we get to trivia on this week's episode, let me advise you not to be criminally negligent by failing to join our Patreon, or follow us on YouTube, or leave a review wherever you're listening to us.
Patreon is your gateway to all things Mission Log, including exclusive access to the unedited version of our show and our private Discord, where you can interact with us, your hosts, Earl and me, along with the other Roddenberry Podcast hosts during scheduled live chats, along with occasional screenings and even Gene-ology game night. And you know what? You don't even have to listen to our show to come join us for game night. It's open. It's fun. It's a good time. You can access all of this for just a mere $1 a month. So head over to patreon.com/missionlog and see what tier works for you and join the conversation.
By the way, reviews help our shows more than you know. Even if you can't come up with the words for a written review, a 5-star rating really goes a long way to tell the algorithm that you like us and that other people might like us too. We're counting on our loyal genealogists to spread the word. And that's a true fact.
And now, this week's trivia. Earl, I think we need a trivia truth bomb.
I may have something that fits that description. We'll find out if any of this sounds true.
All right.
Even trying to explain this show, of which Gene wrote but a single episode, may be more of a rabbit hole than usual. So brace yourself for a journey not only into obscure television, but extinct print periodicals as well? G.E. True, sponsored by General Electric, was a half-hour anthology show that aired for a single season on CBS. The showrunner and host of G.E. True was already a familiar face in America's TV living rooms, Jack Webb of Dragnet fame. Jack's show dramatized stories that had appeared in True magazine. And having said that, I now need to put the explanation of the TV show on pause to explain the magazine. Billed as the Man's Magazine, True magazine, first published in 1937, featured accounts of guys doing adventurous guy things, by guys, for guys. Think of it as Boys Life for the Old Boys Network. In its heyday, it was reasonably popular. True was one of many periodicals originating from the halls of Fawcett Publishing, who comics fans will remember as the originators of Captain Marvel. No, not that Captain Marvel, the other Captain Marvel. You know, the one we now simply know as Shazam! Actually, that was more like Jim Nabors doing Shazam, but continuing. True magazine ran for decades. I was surprised to find that its final issue was within my lifetime, in 1975. The television series was an anthology with Jack Webb as the only person you saw from one episode to the next, and Gene's assignment was to adapt a story from the magazine. If you think you smell a paycheck gig that's just there to keep the lights on and hold the bill collectors at bay, you're probably not wrong. In any case, Gene received half of the teleplay credit, sharing credit for writing the script with Harold Jack Bloom, future creator of such shows as Emergency, Project UFO, and the early 70s Western detective series Heck Ramsey, which starred Have Guns Richard Boone in his last series role. Bloom received credit for additional story material for the James Bond film You Only Live Twice, owing to a draft of the script he wrote that was subsequently rewritten by no less a writer than Roald Dahl. In all, as the show's designated head writer, Harold Jack Bloom wrote or co-wrote 20 episodes of G.E. True's 33 episodes. That brings us to the cast. Carl Held, starring as patrolman John Egan, will be a familiar face for fans of classic Star Trek. He played Lindstrom in Return of the Archons, but he was a frequent flyer guest star on both sides of the Atlantic. On U.S. television, he could be seen in episodes of The Outer Limits, The Girl from U.N.C.L.E., The Invaders, The Incredible Hulk, St. Elsewhere, MacGyver, and L.A. Law. On British TV, some of which made it to our shores, you could see Carl in Strange Report, Space 1999, The Aphrodite Inheritance, and Return of the Saint. Carl would appear in one later episode of G.E. True as a different character. As Gene, or Jeannie, we have Barbara Wilkin, whose credits span just over a single decade, with appearances in The Big Valley, Gunsmoke, The Outer Limits, and the 1964 B-movie, The Flesh Eaters. We lost her in 1984. Credited as Neil Nephew here, actor Neil Burston played Whip, a guy who's constantly fiddling with his switchblade knife because fidget spinners haven't been invented yet. This role falls right in the middle of his very brief acting career. If his name sounds familiar, that's because he was married to Ellen Burstyn, whose acting career was gaining steam as Neil's was faltering. Neil turned to behind-the-scenes work, writing nearly half of the episodes of The Monkees, but untreated mental health issues and his own security over whose career was the more successful led to a divorce in 1972. Their story takes far darker turns from there until Neil took his own life in 1978. If you want to know the details, Neil figures prominently in Ellen Burstyn's memoir, but heads up, it is some real trigger warning stuff. V Victor 5 was the second episode of G.E. True, airing on October 7th, 1962, putting it in the 1-month gap that separated the Have Gun Will Travel episodes Taylor's Woman and Marshal of Sweetwater. This episode is on YouTube in at least 2 different versions, last I checked, so you can see it for yourself.
How about you beat it while you still can? Who elected you hero? This George is going to come here and beat your brains out. Worse, maybe. Look, nobody around here is gonna help you. Nobody wants you. Don't you understand?
Go ahead, cop. Shoot off a few more.
Sucker. Man. A car backfired. That's all anybody hears.
I got 5 good ones left.
July 1933. We are post-Prohibition, but the Depression has set in. With anger due to the difficulty of the times, there was some political talk of putting 2-man police teams on patrol duty in new prowl cars, rather than solo beat cops walking around. This is the story of how the public decided that 2-man teams was in fact a good idea. V Victor 5. Act 1. It's a hot one in New York City, and even though Patrolman John Egan has finished his shift, having walked 8 hours in the heat and humidity, a police officer's work is never done. As he exits the locker room, he notices a wanted poster. 5 persons of interest with a criminal history are featured. Eddie Warren, Duke Snively, Ossie Mance, Pete Callahan, and John Coe, alias Spitz. There's been an update. A stolen car. A 1929 Packard. Black, 4-door sedan. The plate reads V5880. V Victor 5880, as he was trained to remember. He exits the precinct to find 2 kids sitting on top of his own car, a Tid and Lizzie. He shoos them away. A fellow cop laughs and asks if there are any scratches. John scoffs. Every fender is a month's pay. He gets in his car and heads for home, flagging down a newspaper man at a traffic stop. He pays for a paper and begins reading it. The attending traffic cop reminds him that this ain't a library and he needs to move it along. He travels the road home, stopping to shoo some kids out of the road as they cool off in an open fire hydrant. He's trying to get home to his wife and 2 young boys after a long, sweltering day. That is, until he spots it. The 1929 Packard, black, 4 doors, but most importantly, the license plate. V Victor 5. Egan follows the car and, at a stop, notices that the occupants of the car match the descriptions on the wanted poster. They are also described as armed and dangerous. He must pursue, but as he scans the street, he can't find a squad car or a patrolman to assist. Egan will have to go it alone. Egan follows the car to its destination, Hell's Kitchen. Matt Murdock, Foggy Nelson, and Karen Page aren't around to give him a hand either. This is the poorest, most violent part of town. He worked here as a rookie 3 years prior, so he's not unfamiliar with the territory. He follows the car and parks, going to the trunk for his gun and wrapping it in his newspaper. It's time for a drink at the local watering hole. Act 2. Hell's Kitchen is a desperate sight. Beleaguered residents hang the wash out to dry off of dingy apartment balconies, while a baby cries in the distance. Egan enters the bar, sitting at the opposite end from his suspects. He orders a pint and asks the bartender if he's got a phone. "Phones cost money," he retorts, and then says there might be one around the corner. Egan thanks him and sips his pint. He can't pull his gun here. The gang won't care who gets caught in the crossfire, but he's a cop. He must care. He takes a long draw from his beer. This is going to take some thinking. A blonde woman named Jeannie enters the scene. She greets the criminal gang like old friends, putting an arm around one of the men, Duke, but his boss informs him that they're not sticking around and shoos her off. Jeannie goes to the opposite side of the bar, sitting next to Egan, downing a drink. Egan chats with Jeannie, asking her if she's hot. "Not my fault," she says, cool as a cucumber. Egan begins feeding her a story about how he doesn't want any trouble, not with her boyfriend over there, and especially not with the cops. "Cops are after you?" she asks. Egan tells her that she's a smart girl. A lot of folks aren't. They make telephone calls, trying to pick up some easy money, only to get themselves hurt, you know what I mean? Jean offers him a passive-aggressive look. "Boy, did you turn out to be a wrong number," she says. That was all Egan needed. She wouldn't call the police, even to turn in a stranger. The slum's unwritten code against squealers, canaries, and rats was too strong. Cops have to say no all the time, and nobody likes that. He's definitely not outing himself as a cop in this neighborhood. Egan finishes his pint and walks down the street to find a phone. He asks the grocer down the road if he does have a phone. He wants to call the pound. He's looking for a lost dog. A black and white doggy. Have you seen him? The grocer doesn't have a phone, and he's not seen the dog. Egan asks if the mailman, or maybe a cop who has this beat, has seen the dog. Are they around? He says he saw the cop about an hour ago over by the warehouse. Egan thanks him for the information and walks on. He notices a young boy playing catch in the street. Egan asks him to make a phone call for him, offering him a dime. Get 2 nickels for it at the drugstore, and make a phone call, using one for the phone call, the other for him to keep. But before he can give him the number, the boy runs off with the dime. His companion asks him for a dime, but Egan pushes him aside. The criminals he's been tailing have just walked out of the bar. He's out of options. Egan runs to his car, tossing aside the newspaper and pulling his piece. He identifies himself as a cop and tells him to stick him up and face the wall. Several onlookers in the street close in, and many watch from their apartment balconies overhead. Jeannie and the grocer run out into the street as well, seeing what all the commotion is about. "Well, of course he's a cop, stringing me along," she says. Egan says that he got a call about these criminals. He says they're all about to take a walk over the precinct 128. But the ringleader, Eddie Warren, tells him, no dice. They like it here, with their friends. Egan says he doesn't want to use his gun, but before he can comment further, Warren is incredulous. "You're gonna shoot 5 guys in the back with their hands up with witnesses?" Egan knows he's stepped in it now, but he can't back down, saying he'll kill the first one of them that moves. One of the men reminds him that if he kills one of them, he's still outnumbered. They'd get him before he could fire the next shot. Egan doubles down on his threat. Warren mentions calmly to the crowd, $100 to anyone who can get him off our backs. A young man approaches Egan with a knife. Egan tells him to back up and not interfere, but the young man only replies, "I wonder, Mr. Policeman, tell me, who's got who?" Egan wipes his brow. This may be harder than he thought. Act 3. Forecast says it's 93 degrees and 74% humidity. Egan's been holding his prisoners for 30 minutes, and with each passing minute, he tires in the sweltering heat of Hell's Kitchen. The weight of his .38 pistol doubles every 10 minutes as he keeps it trained on the criminals. But the real feel of that 2-ish pound gun is more like 20. How long can he hold out against these 5 men facing the electric chair? Surely backup is coming soon. Right? Right? Warren reminds the crowd of his $100 offer. One of the bystanders asks John if he really is a cop. Without taking his eyes or gun off the men, he hands the questioner his ID. Yes, he's a cop. And hey, who's this sexy dame pictured in your wallet? Is that your wife? Are these your kids? Egan confirms that that is in fact his beautiful wife and his beautiful kids. But it's not his beautiful house. He confirms all of this without relaxing his sights on his targets. $500. $100 to each of the first 5 guys who take him, shouts Warren. A couple of the young men approach Egan. He tells them not to try anything, but one says he's not going to hurt him too bad. Just cut that hand so you don't hold up that gun so good. The young man attempts to take a literal stab at Egan, but he can't cut it. John clocks him, showing him the meaning of the phrase pistol whip. The kid hits the ground with a few less teeth and a probable broken jaw. One man asks who John wants him to call, but another bystander reminds him that he lives around here. He's got a wife. But before he can do anything further, he's swarmed by some younger riffraff who beat him to the ground. The grocer and some other bystanders pull the young man off of him. The grocer calls it. You don't want to call the cops? Fine. But there won't be any fighting here. Another man threatens John, saying that he can stop him, and he won't even know what he looks like. John assures him that if he tries to stop him here, he'll be back. He will know what he sounds like, and he'll get someone here to help him identify him. The man calls BS on John, but John challenges him, and he relents. 1 hour and 9 minutes later, that gun might as well be 100 pounds. Now he's worried that he may shoot involuntarily, or may not have the strength to shoot if he had to. One of the criminals is wilting in the summer heat, trying to rest his head against the wall, but John tells him to keep his head up and those hands up. Meanwhile, one of the onlookers from her balcony says that John would be better off to take a payoff and get out of here. But her husband disagrees. He's got guts to keep holding them there that long. 2 of the younger men on the scene have now found Egan's car. They know it's his because his name is on the steering wheel. What are they going to do with it now? John tells him to back up from that car. Oh, you mean the one with the broken windshield? Crash! And the broken headlights? Smash, smash! And the dented fenders? Bang, bang, bang! There goes several months' pay with each of those fenders, windows, windshield, headlights, and now he's got a busted radiator too, and with a few slices, airless tires. Was it worth it, cop? Asks Warren. The sun beats down on Egan. Where is the backup he so desperately needs? Each of these men are too dangerous to be left free, but he's fading. The criminals are fading too, but they think they might have an ace in the hole. Jeannie, go make a phone call. Get my brother George, who's in Uptown. Jeannie doesn't miss a trick. What's in it for her? Warren promises her the same $500. But how does she know he'll hold up his end of the deal? Warren counters with, hey, what do you have to lose, a nickel? But one of the young bystanders protests. Hey, why does she get to make the call? Jeannie just tells him to wipe his nose. She's had enough with this. Egan reminds her that she'd be an accessory to murder. 20 years to life. She's not calling nothing. She's just going for a cold drink. She's sick of looking at this. Before she can walk off, Egan fires a warning shot. You better not make that call. Jeannie is incredulous. Doesn't Egan understand that no one wants him here? He's got no help. What he's doing is pointless. He's just going to get himself killed. Warren tells him to fire off another. All anyone will hear is a car backfiring. John reminds him that he's still got 5 good shots left in that gun. Jeannie quietly shakes her head and exits the scene. 1 hour and 34 minutes. That service revolver is up to 100 pounds in his exhausted, cramping arm. John's entire body feels weak and is fading with the heat and tension. One of the criminals cries out, "You're killing us like this," and sinks down to the ground, but John stands firm, hands to the wall. A car pulls up. Oh no, it's George. He's looking fly in his pinstriped suit and black and white shoes, but he's toting a crowbar. He begins to parley with John, but his brother tells him it's futile. John won't back down. George doesn't think so. He's got something to gain, and he's got something to lose, too. His brother has got a gun in that pocket. If John shoots at George, he might miss, but his brother won't. He could bend a John Egan-shaped curve in his crowbar with one good whack to the skull. Before George can do anything, a siren wails in the distance. A cop car arrives, and a seemingly endless supply of cops clown car out of the patrol vehicle. One of the criminals turns to attack, but John has just enough strength left to provide him with his second pistol whip of the day. Egan's fellow officer approaches John, tells him it's okay, and helps him to pry his locked fingers loose from the gun. The cop asks if that's John's car over there. Yes, it is. John is quietly distressed by the damage, but there's no room for him to clown car in the patrol vehicle back to the station. He'll have to hoof it to the train. He shakes out the glass from his suit jacket and walks down the road, where he meets Jeannie. He offers her a simple thanks. She doesn't say a word, just smiles. It had been 1 hour and 57 minutes since he drew his gun and shouted, "Stop! Police officer!" Now he could go home. John's incident was used as an example to illustrate the need for police to work in pairs in more tenderloin areas. Funds were granted for such purposes. John remembers that day in his own way. A framed letter from the city government regretting that taxpayers could not repay him for the damage to his car. It was not city property. The end.
Excellent job, Ashley. This is a very monologue, very narrator-heavy script, which is giving us the current weather conditions. He's like, temperature, 93 degrees, humidity, 79. It's like, could you program your Alexa to sound like Jack Webb?
Hey, maybe you could. I wouldn't be surprised. They make stuff like that for just about everything. My thing was, back in ye olden days, when you would leave someone a voicemail message and your phone was not smart enough to tell you when and what time someone left you said message, I would say, "Hey, it's me. It's about, this time, blah, blah, blah. What are you going to do this weekend, blah, blah, blah." And so one of my friends was like, the way that you do that, like at the start of every voicemail message, like, I just want you to tell me the temperature as well, like call in time and temperature, which apparently you can still do in my hometown. My cousin tried it randomly the other day. You can still call time and temperature in my hometown.
At the beep, it will be 5 o'clock.
The temperature is blah, blah, blah. The humidity is blah, blah, blah. Well, it's frickin' hot in New York City, and he's in Hell's Kitchen. Dang.
Yeah, so Jack Webb can do Dragnet weather. I'd like for him to also do sports. The Dolphins hosted the Browns last night in Miami. In the moment, the results of that trial. Game. I mean, that game.
Game. Yeah, and it's funny because, I was like, oh, Jack Webb. I know that name. Why do I know that name? And I'm listening to the narration as I'm watching the episode. I was like, gosh, this just feels like Dragnet. Why does this... Oh, Jack Webb created Dragnet. I'm an idiot. Derp. And this would have been after the first run of Dragnet, the black and white run. I watched a lot of Dragnet for like an 8-year-old kid.
Well, fortunately for you, between the black and white run and the full color version, they made a lot of Dragnet.
Yeah, there was a metric ton of Dragnet that Nick and Knight could rerun and rerun.
Now, I know this episode is a co-write, so I went in kind of tamping down my expectations of, okay, I'm going to look for the Gene here, especially because there's a lady named Gene. And it's like, oh, well, that's not the Gene we're looking for. These are not the Genes you're looking for. There's a pair of Genes we're talking about. But the whole speech about the police officer being on duty 24 hours a day, that felt a lot like the speech at the beginning of Gene's episode of The Naked City.
Yeah, which we just covered last time.
Yeah, that seems like it cannot possibly be a coincidence. Like, okay, we are nearly a decade after Gene retiring from the police force. And it seems like he's working some stuff out of his system.
Yeah. Before I became a freelance writer and podcaster, and then DJ by night, I used to work in retail management full-time. Even when I was clocked out, I felt like I could never turn off. And so when I'm hearing things like, the policeman is technically on duty 24 hours a day, and I'm like, ugh, it just makes like my stomach lurch because I know what that feels like, and it is exhausting. That's why I did not last very long in that position, especially once I got salaried, because then at least I wasn't even getting overtime. So yeah. It was no thank you.
What about those 1930s cars?
They look real slick.
Okay, I had to check myself with a little bit of mental math here.
Okay.
The show was made and shown in 1962. Okay, so really, those old cars are only about 30 years old.
Yeah. And then they have to smash one up.
Yeah, but there were probably still plenty of them at that time. I mean, It's like, it would be like if I walked outside right now and saw someone parked a 96 Kia across the street.
Sure. Right.
No big deal. You could take a crowbar to that, but they would probably prefer you didn't. Yeah, it was probably no biggie for them to have those cars, but you kind of do the mental adjustment for the inflation of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then realize, oh, those cars are like 90 years old now. Holy crap. And then my back hurts and I need to lay down. Okay, one other note, and it's not a big deal because he's there and gone again and we don't see him again, but hello, stereotypical Irish accented police officer.
I know, and I wanted to call the guy Officer McNulty or something like that, and then I went and looked at the IMDb, and I'm pretty sure his name was actually Officer McNulty. Or something like that. Wow. Here we go.
The only way we could have stereotyped him more was if he left the scene to go find his Lucky Charms. It was terrible. Did you feel like this show was a bit of a throwback?
Besides me watching this and thinking, oh, this feels like Dragnet, and I was like, oh, well, yeah, it's because it pretty much is like a Dragnet spinoff, etc. Yeah. What do you feel like it's throwing back to?
I feel like it's throwing back to the Ziv shows that Gene started with.
Because, like Highway Patrol and...
Yeah, because we got a car full of bad guys in snazzy hats.
You're right. They are pretty much all wearing snazzy hats.
Yeah, I think this may mean another snazzy hat night for Gene-ology After Dark in the Discord.
Oh, man. Well, we need to make sure we advertise so folks show up in their snazziest hats.
Yes. It's just, just a few shows ago, we were like, wow, Defiance County, Dr. Kildare, modern TV, it's happening right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
This feels like something straight off the Ziv lot.
There were a few more scenes in this, a few more set changes than what are typical in a Ziv show, but yeah.
And there was some directorial stuff that I really... There was some real style in this.
Yeah.
I will give it that. It's just, at first, it just felt like, okay, this is a show out of time. Mm-hmm. It's 62. We should be getting more Dr. Kildares and less of this. However, the thought occurs that there may have been a call for this sort of thing as the 60s marched on.
Mm-hmm.
And more complex topics started entering the storytelling, and the older segment of the TV audience was now like, nope, la 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 la, can't hear you, 60s. And so here's a time capsule show deliberately made that way. And I really wonder if this was how this show was done. It's always hard to judge with these shows where this is the only episode we're seeing of it.
Right.
It just feels like it's so out of another time. Here's another thing that feels out of time. Telephones cost money.
They do, and not everyone has one. You might have to run around the corner to use a phone if you needed one. And you better bring a nickel.
Yeah.
Might bring two.
I had a flashback to Lucius Coyne not believing Jefferson Drum, saying, hey, they've got telephones on the East Coast now.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you remember that? Oh, no, that's not real. Birds aren't real. Phones aren't real.
No.
Well, all of these observations so far were kind of my initial impressions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when Egan apprehends the bad guys in their snazzy hats, the tone shifts big time.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you are in danger. Because if the actual bad guys don't get you, and I do feel compelled to point out, they are at this point merely suspects who have really bad rap sheets.
Mm-hmm.
I'll come back to that later.
Yeah.
The surly crowd suffering heat madness might get you if they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, they're suspects. Yes, they have bad rap sheets, but they are in a stolen vehicle. That gives him license to try to do an arrest. But yeah, the whole tone of the episode just really shifts as soon as he pulls his piece and he's like, hands up, face the wall. You know, I'm a cop, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to take a walk down to precinct 128. It's like, dude, you're going to make 4 guys walk in front of you to a police precinct? Like, with their hands in the air the whole time? Like, this just seems like a bad idea. Like, there's so much of this, I'm like, I understand why he's looking for a beat cop or another patrol car or something to give him a hand. But at the same time, I'm like, dude, if you spot them, I understand you trying to tail them. They don't know you're here. Why don't you run to a phone somewhere and then go in the bar? That was your mistake.
Yeah, not making the call before he went in there.
If you're going into a bar, you're probably going to linger for a little bit, at least long enough to have a drink, which will probably be, you know, more time than it takes you to dash about and make a phone call.
Yeah, when you put it that way, boy, this really seems like a good specimen of the idiot ball. It's like this story falls apart if people are actually smart and think things through.
Well, and, you know, he said that he patrolled Hell's Kitchen 3 years prior. So, I mean, this is only maybe his 4th year as a cop. See, he said he patrolled Hell's Kitchen as a rookie. So,
well, he's still acting like a rookie.
Yeah, like, I get, like, you know, your adrenaline's pumping. You're like, oh, crap, there's all these really, really bad dudes. We can't let them get away. But I don't have any help. But at the same time, I can't risk them escaping. I get it. But you're not doing anybody any favors if you get killed. Because if you get killed, they're going to get away.
Yeah. You will never see them or their snazzy hats again. I had very complex feelings about Egan just outright saying, I'll kill the first one of you that moves. I will get into this in discussion because I looked some stuff up with regard to when the story takes place and when the show was made. Mm-hmm. Because there was something specific that I was thinking of here, and it's just like, that doesn't sound great. But again, I'm going to make my case. We're dealing with throwback TV. It's less challenging. Of course the cops are good. Of course the cops are in the right. There's no nuance for things like due process.
Sure.
Egan is in a phenomenally bad situation here, but he's put himself in this phenomenally bad situation.
Yeah. You know, this was 1933. Miranda rights did not exist until June 13th, 1966.
Oh, you looked up the same thing I did.
Yep.
That will come up again. There will be a quiz.
Put a pin on that. What do you think of Genie, Earl?
Well, now, first off, you know, that very first well, not really the first line of hers. The first line she says to Egan, she just grabs the drink and he just looks at her and he's like, hot? Of course, I'm filtering everything through that police squad filter whenever I watch something. And it's, she should turn to him and say, yes, I know.
I put the exact turn of phrase she uses, like, man, I'm going to file that away for later and save that. And it says, somebody asks me if I'm hot. Not my fault, she says.
I do appreciate that she's got some sass. You really want to like her, but also it's like she knows the bad guys in the snazzy hats, and it's like, okay, what's up with that? Is it just because she frequents that establishment, and they frequent that establishment, and everybody knows your name, but also everyone's packing heat? I don't know.
Yeah, there's certain familiarity between her and Duke, was one of the younger guys that she was friends with. Also, these criminals' names, I'm like, these are like the most on the nose 1930s criminal names. Eddie Warren, just gonna have kind of a common name, but an Eddie, you gotta have an Eddie. You got Duke Snively. I'm like,
yes.
Ossie Mance, Pete Callahan, gotta make it sound like Irishish, and then John Coe, alias Spitz. Anyway, she's kind of buddy with Duke, so I'm like, and Egan refers to him as her boyfriend. She doesn't bother to correct him, so maybe that's the case there. I don't know, but there, he calls it the slum code of I didn't see nothing. I'm not saying nothing. Not my business.
Really interesting, because that feels like it almost could have been the whole story. And it just gets mentioned in passing here. Now, our snazzy-headed bad guys, I do want to give these guys credit for having to do something incredibly silly for a really cool shot in this episode. Okay, we come back from commercial. Got these guys up against the brick wall. There's this really cool shot where the bad guys are facing the camera with their backs to Egan, and he's in the background, and the camera is just tracking down the line of them, of these guys. So we see their faces.
Yeah.
That is a cool shot. Big golf clap, great concept. You are seeing it from the perspective of the wall. So the camera is now the wall. But what this means, how you pull that off, is these 5 tough guys are miming leaning up against a wall with their hands against it for this shot to work, which in real time, you had to be trying not to bust up laughing doing that.
That's a great point.
It's a really dramatic shot, but when I started thinking about how the sausage had to get made, I just started laughing. I mean, it's like, tonight on G.E. True, the arrest of Marcel Marceau.
Thinking kind of about those shots, Earl, something I noticed in this episode, are you familiar with the concept of like the Netflixication or the second screening ification of dialogue in TV, where there's a lot more description because people are looking at their phones while having the TV on in the background, which, you know what? I do it all the time. The way that Jack Webb is narrating this episode, and yes, we get it at the beginning, where we get a shot of each of the criminals. You get all their names and all their rap sheets. These are big, tough guys.
And they say it twice.
They say it 3 times. Do it again when they're in the bar. The second time is in the bar. He goes down the line and looks at each of the guys. So-and-so. Wanted for robbery, accessory to murder, blah, 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 blah.
For those of you just joining us.
Yes, it was in every single act. That was like, that's really interesting that they would repeat that. And then at the end of the episode, right before backup finally shows up, he repeats like the opening monologue.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if that, again, because this is the only episode of the show we've seen. I don't know if that was like a trait of the episode or if that was just how it worked for this particular episode, but I was like, that was not something I ever expected. I kind of wondered, like, what are we doing on the budget for this show? Or did we run out of writing time? Gene and Mr. Bloom, did they and they collabed on the teleplay, like, where we running out of time and like, oh, let's just repeat the beginning for extra dramatic effect.
Like I have said in the past, you can't be looking at your phone watching TV in the 60s because you're just holding up the whole phone like, why am I looking at this phone?
Why am I looking at this phone? Nothing's happening. It's not ringing.
You know who does not show up in every act?
Who does not show up in every act, Earl?
The random organ grinder who just walks through the scene and everyone stops and stares at him like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, like the organ grinder's walking through and he's like, oh crap, what's happening here? And then he's like, and runs off the scene.
I laughed out loud at that. I mean, that is a great tension breaker, but it almost breaks the fourth wall. It's like...
I was just like, I mean, it got everybody to turn around, and I'm just like, is that going to be like the guys are going to try to break because rando organ grinder, plowed on through? I mean, if we're going to lean into all the gangster stereotypes, why don't we have a Mr. Italian organ grinder man just wander on through?
I have a theory about him later, but yeah, sir, this is not a Wendy's. Another directorial touch that I really liked is there are several lingering shots where you are looking at the back of Egan's head and the back of his neck.
Yeah.
And you are just hearing all hell break loose around him.
Mm-hmm.
And he can't move. He can't take his eyes off of these guys.
Yeah.
But you've got crazy dude who is using a switchblade knife as his fidget spinner. The other kid who's like, hey, $100 sounds good to me. I'll jump a cop.
Yeah, why not? Ain't got nothing better to do. Easy money.
And the thought occurred to me, the reason that shot is there repeatedly, anybody could take this guy by hitting him across the back of the head with something.
Yeah.
And the fact that the camera is looking at the back of his head and the back of his neck, you're almost expecting that to happen. And so it's a really interesting way of showing just how exposed and vulnerable Egan is.
Yeah. The fact that they make a point of, like, there's only a few, like, riffraff kind of guys.
Yeah.
Who are interested in starting trouble, and they do not present an air of intelligence. Like, they're just, like, they think they're either unwell because this whole thing is funny to them, or they want to be like Eddie Warren and the gang when they grow up.
It's a really, like I said, the tone shift hits you like a sack of bricks, and suddenly it's just dangerous till the end of the show. It's really impressive that it kind of lulled me into a false sense of, well, this show's not going to be about much the first time I watched it, and then it's like, whoa.
Yeah, it ended up being a lot heavier, more involved, more intense than I anticipated it being.
And finally, Jack Webb says that future policemen will work in pairs in tenderloin areas, and all I could think was this the meat aisle at the grocery store?
Yeah, I was like, excuse me, what areas? Is that a technical term that I have literally never heard before? And I won't say watch a lot of cop shows, but I would have heard that one before, right? So, Earl, what would you like to talk about in relation to V Victor 5?
Oh, there's lots of stuff here. There is more stuff here than I was expecting going in, because that first act is just kind of like, okay, really? We got stereotypical Irish police officer, and we've got Duke Snively sitting at the bar. Okay, there not much is going to be happening here, but then that tone shift hits. This is like the dubstep of Gene Roddenberry scripts. I mean, there's stuff that I could go down rabbit holes that don't even need to be here. I mean, like, we could talk about how we've gone from, police officers should work in pairs for backup and accountability, to, would you all please turn on your body cameras with literally the only button that's on the device, please. And not forget to do that thing, please. But that's a whole different detour.
Yeah.
There is actually a really complex civic equation at the heart of this episode. And that leads to something that is important right now, kind of an open question that everyone is shifting uncomfortably in their seats trying to come up with the answer. Now, Egan is in a tough spot because he is a lone cop trying to arrest, was it 4 guys or 5 guys in Hell's Kitchen?
5 guys.
5 guys. Okay, so one of them is leaning up against that brick wall with a sack that is 90% fries and 10% burger. Got it. Cops are not welcome there. The crowd that has gathered around him is vocally unsympathetic to Egan's plight. No one here is interested in backing the blue. Also, I have to say, and this is another little detour, and we kind of hinted at this earlier, by modern standards, Egan is really not making his own case to those around him. He is not stating on what charges these men are wanted or being arrested. He's just assuming, hey, I'm a cop, everyone recognize my authority. The story is set in the 30s. The show was made in 1962. Miranda versus Arizona wasn't decided by the Supreme Court until 1966. And so, we kind of blew this open earlier. Chew on that for a second. Miranda rights are only older than the first season of Star Trek by 3 months.
That's kind of insane to think about.
What Egan is up against is the question of government by consent of the governed.
Go on.
He's in a neighborhood that, for whatever reason, is not keen to hand out that consent. And if this crowd turns against him, well, hey, there's a darker version of the story. It's almost like the intro of the Mirror Universe episodes of Enterprise. In First Contact, Zephram Cochrane shakes the Vulcan's hand. In the Mirror episode credits on Enterprise, he guns the Vulcan down. So if Egan pisses off this crowd of people, if he does not convince them that his authority is earned and they should aid him, you're never going to see this guy alive again. You may never find him again.
Nah, he wasn't there. I didn't see him.
Yeah, especially not with Duke Snively and friends still hanging around the neighborhood. Snitches get stitches, and no one's going to say a word. Egan has to sell everyone on his moral authority and his right to be doing what he's doing, and he has to sell them on these 5 guys being in the wrong. And maybe because it's a pre-Miranda period piece, he's not doing too well there. But let's venture into some hypothetical territory and examine wider applications of this question. If an authority figure or a body claiming authority is not using that authority justly, what happens to consent by the governed in that version of the equation? Can you withdraw that consent? Spoiler alert, any consent can absolutely be withdrawn at any time. Unless you have done some opt-in thing on the internet, then we can't help you. What happens to order in that situation? What happens to the rule of law in that situation? Now, this feels like a question that's maybe slightly applicable to the here and now. Just because someone claims authority, what are the guardrails of that authority? And at what point do you just say no? Study up, there's going to be a quiz. In fairness, V Victor 5 here doesn't really go into that because it's... the beginning of it is very deceptive. It's like, oh, this is going to be a piece of 50s TV that got stuck between the sofa cushions, and hey, we found it in 1962, and we're going to put it on the air.
Mm-hmm.
There is surprisingly little nuance. Egan is a cop. Of course, he is in the right. What if someone in his situation is not in the right? At what point is there justification for a collective, no, we no longer recognize your authority? Just an interesting question that occurred to me while I was watching this. And of course, I am just talking about old TV shows and nothing else.
Yeah, that's definitely all we're talking about here today on Mission Log Gene-ology.
As always.
Good grief. Earl, everything that you just said did not at all occur to me.
Whoa.
I'm mostly thinking about, dude, you really screwed this up by not making the phone call first.
Yeah.
and you're about to pay the ultimate price. I don't wish this on you, but there are things you could have done to make this a better situation for yourself. So I'm frustrated with Egan. I also understand where he's coming from, because, you know, he's got grounds to try to bring these guys in. They're in a stolen vehicle. They're all wanted for other crimes or have done time for other crimes. And so they are known criminals. So he's got some grounds to kind of chase them down, but you're right. He just identifies himself as a cop. He doesn't tell them why he's holding them and why he's not going to let them go. So, I mean, in a time before Miranda rights, it's his word versus theirs. And who are the court going to listen to? And yeah, admittedly, these guys had done bad things and they needed to go to jail. And, you know, that's legit. But in a time prior to Miranda rights and people being either put under arrest without any kind of due process or anything like that, that's a problem.
Yeah, and just think, back then, either when this show was made or in the period of time, the historic period in which the story takes place, you weren't even dealing with being extrajudicially killed and then having national figures say, oh, this was a bad person, with absolutely no basis in fact.
Yeah.
You didn't have to worry about that. So we still have Miranda rights now, but it seems like there are some people who want to walk this back to the pre-Miranda rights time. And so these questions of, oh, having your rights read to you, this is a much more recent thing than we thought it was. When I went and looked it up, I was like, had that happened yet? Surely it had. Oh, no.
Yeah. That definitely got to thinking about it, but I didn't think to look up the date until we were talking. I was like, oh yeah, you know what? I bet that was prior to that. I mean, one points I will give in Egan's favor. He doesn't hide his face. He provides ID when asked.
Yeah, he does. I'm kind of surprised they didn't empty his wallet for him, but...
Oh, yeah, no. They just was, talking about his smoking hot wife. Is this your beautiful wife? Is this your beautiful kids?
Yeah, which there's kind of some menace there, because it's like, oh, hey, we're doxing him to everyone listening in the street.
Right. We're letting everybody know, like, oh, this guy's got more on the line than just his own neck.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot going on here, and even knowing the historical context that takes things like Miranda rights, or actually, I believe the formal term for it is the Miranda warning. That's actually the law enforcement term for it. Takes that out of the picture. But taking that out of the picture and just seeing this guy say, hey, I've got a gun on you, up against that wall, not having to explain to anyone why he's doing this, do we want to go back to that? I think the answer is no.
No, thank you. Why? I mean, this might have been something better reserved for observations, but why is everybody wearing three-piece suits on July 1st, 1933 in, sweltering heat? Schnazzy hats or no, I get it's part of the look. This is... I live in the South. I no way am I wearing any kind of suit July 1st, regardless of the year. It's stupid hot outside. And these guys, so not only are we having due process, we're having a situation where any one of the 5 criminals, plus Egan, and anybody else standing out there could real quick drop from a heat stroke. And frankly, it's shocking that it didn't happen sooner.
I like the one guy who wilts like a flower and says, "You're killing me," and I just instinctively said, "Smalls."
I wish I had thought to say Smalls. That would have been great. Earl, I think we need to wrap this thing up, load everyone into the back of the car, because they all under arrest, and somehow all 5 of those bad guys and the endless caravan of policemen that came out of that police car are all fitting back, and no room for the poor guy who just stood there in the sweltering heat for 2 hours.
Yeah, well, hey, we'll remind you, the TARDIS has a sign on top of it that says police box.
Hey, indeed. So bigger on the inside.
Fit as many guys as you want in there, except for that one guy.
Except for you, sir, who just caught all these bad dudes and got your car busted up, and we're definitely not paying for that. It's not, it's not city property. Yeah, you just out of luck, bud. Good luck trying to get your car towed from Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah, wow. So a while back, I mistakenly thought we had left the half-hour dramas behind. I had forgotten we had this little gem coming up.
Yeah.
And this is a bite-sized morsel of dramatic tension. And some of it is really skillfully and stylishly executed. You know, where there are shots where I am the wall. There's also really surprisingly added elements like the organ grinder wandering into the show like he was booked for a kids show filming in the next studio over and he's just passing through. Oh, sorry, and they just left it in.
I mean, the organ grinder is not listed on IMDb. I need to go back and double check the credits, see if they listed Rando Organ Grinder number 5. All that was missing was a little monkey with some cymbals.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. What if he was in the wrong studio? We just leave it in. We're doing this Ziv style, baby.
We're doing this Ziv style. I like that theory, Earl. I'm going to co-sign on that one.
No retakes. It's kind of like there's a famous story about Highway Patrol where they were doing outdoor filming, but it was next to a petting zoo. And so Broderick Crawford is standing there and goes, rah, 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 by his car, you know, over his two-way radio, and this llama just wanders through the shot. No, the kid stays in the picture.
Hey, give that llama a walk-on role. What's his name? Larry?
Dolly.
Larry the llama.
Okay.
Dolly. Oh, Dolly llama. I love it.
Anyway.
Woo.
Now, do I think the message was any of the issues I raised in discussion? Actually, no, I don't.
No.
I think the message is something far simpler than that.
Tell us more.
If you want a good outcome, you have to be willing to be the one person who bucks the crowd and bucks the groupthink and stands up and does the right thing. That's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be safe. It will not be possible to have a good outcome unless that first person steps forward and says, no, this isn't right. What history has often shown us is usually once that first person stands up and says it, it's easier for the next person and the person after that and the person after that to stand up and say, hey, you know what? This isn't right. For the record, the person in this story who does that is not Egan the cop. It's Jeannie, the woman he meets in the bar, who eventually calls the police for him. It's interesting that we don't spend a lot of time in her head, and we don't really get to see her make the decision. She just leaves the scene. And then next thing you know, Crowbar Guy shows up, and it's like, oh, is that who she called? But then the cops show up, and it's like, oh, that's who she called. She does the right thing. The bad guys are trying to bribe her with quick and easy cash, and I think she clocks very quickly that may not be forthcoming. But until backup shows up for Egan, his goose is cooked. There's not much of a chance he walks out of that situation alive, especially with Crowbar Guy standing there.
Crowbar George. And his goose is literally cooked because the man is about to, collapse of heat stroke along with all 5 guys that he's holding, up against the wall.
Our hats are melting! Have you no decency, sir? But because one person in this crowd has the moral backbone to say, I will not be a party to this particularly ugly sample of the mob mentality, Egan gets to live to see another day. He gets to go home to his wife and his 2 kids. This is like a more modern, not modern because it's a period piece, it's just a different period. It's a modern retelling of The Posse or A Time for Hanging.
Okay.
They're not going to hang Egan from a tree. But unless one person stands up and says, no, this isn't right, they're not going to be too bothered with the prospect of leaving Egan for dead on the pavement.
Yeah.
Because up until one person shows that backbone, it looks like we're doing mob mentality murder stuff today. So, V Victor 5 did hold my attention. It was kind of a surprising turn around a corner from, okay, this seems like a weirdly out-of-date cop show, to, whoa. But it also made me think of some larger issues, and standing at that intersection, boy, this feels an awful lot like a Gene Roddenberry show to me. How about you, Ashley?
Yeah, and, you were talking about it takes that one person. Well, the one bystander said, who do you need me to call? And immediately, he is beaten to the ground. Now, Jeannie is the smartest person by far in this show. Jeannie knows better than to say openly, who do you want me to call? She knows she may be a lady, but she's going to be restrained in some way. They're going to make sure that she doesn't go anywhere. One question that came to my mind is because the guy's brother, George, Mr. Fancy Pinstripe Suit and Fancy Shoes and Crowbar Dude, shows up first. I have to wonder, did she call George first as a diversion and then immediately call the police right after that? Because I don't know how George would have known to come there anyway. Because he was further uptown.
Could she have called George first and then had a change of heart?
Maybe.
We really don't, like I said, we really aren't in her head. And that feels like the one piece that is missing.
Mm-hmm.
We need to externalize her thought process just a little and give it some weight.
Yeah.
But the ambiguity of it, until the cops show up, is delicious.
Yeah. And even, at the end of the episode, Egan, he's taking the long walk to the train station, and he stops to say thanks to her. She didn't say a word in return. She's neither confirming or denying what she did because she doesn't know who's listening.
I hadn't even thought of that. Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. Because, when the one bystander dude says, who do you need me to call? All the riffraff immediately pummel him to the ground. The other bystanders pulled them all off and said, hey, we're not calling the police, fine, but we're not going to fight either. It's still some measure of, yeah, we know shady stuff goes on in our neighborhood, but we're not going to get in the way enough to stop it. Because we're all fearing for our lives, but we're not going to beat each other up. That's not going to help anything either. So it's like a bad compromise almost. And then Jeannie, I ain't calling nobody. I'm just going to go get a cold drink because I'm sick of looking at this. Because she knows how to play the game. Yeah. When I watched this initially, I thought that she was walking down from upstairs, and now I see that maybe she was just walking into the bar. Again, because the bar dips downwards. You step in to the bar. Yeah. So I'm thinking, oh, does she live above? Because my initial thought was she might be someone who you call and ask for things, Might be a lady of the night or something like that. She wasn't dressed like a hooker or anything. But, I thought she was coming down from upstairs somewhere, and she's all friendly with our 5 bad dudes. Yeah. Or at least she's friendly with Mr. Snively. But his boss is like, nah, go away. We ain't sticking around here long. We gotta go. I don't know, it made me wonder, okay, well, she lives in the neighborhood. She understands how the game is played. And she understands how to get what she needs or what she wants. It's almost like the Road to Wickenburg, the gal in that story, where she's had to learn how to play the game to get what she needs and to get what she wants and to get herself into a position to where she doesn't have to rely on terrible men to just provide for herself.
Yeah.
And while, Hell's Kitchen may still be a not great area of town where some unsavory stuff goes on, it's probably going to be a good bit safer without those 5 guys running around.
Yeah. Feeding everyone too many fries. Wow. I hadn't even really thought of the full range of issues around Jeannie like that, so you just kind of blew my mind.
Well, I mean, you just blew my mind with the way that you're thinking about this, too. I think the 2 different conclusions we came to are very complementary, and I think they can both be true.
Yes, yeah. It'll be interesting to hear, because this is on YouTube, you, dear listener, can go watch it. You could go watch it right now if you haven't already.
Please and thank you.
And I hope you enjoy the organ grinder as much as we did, because that's really the one laugh out loud you get in this half hour. Everything else is like, oh, he's screwed, and then Crowbar Guy shows up, and it's like, oh, man, he's fatally screwed. He's terminally screwed. This is not the half-hour drama exit interview for Gene Roddenberry. But boy, if it was, you couldn't ask for much better. Special thanks to the Roddenberry Repertory Players. Our cast this week featured Ashley Thomas as Jeannie, Jason Smith as John Egan, Kevin Ibbotson as Warren, and Dominic Nigro as Snively. Gene-ology is meant to be entertaining and informative, but it's also just the beginning of an ongoing conversation about the works of Gene Roddenberry. Drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com and join us on Facebook at MissionLogPod. And please remember, your comments could be used on future installments of Gene-ology. If you have any material that might be of interest to us that isn't already in the Roddenberry archive, drop us a line at missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our website is missionlogpodcasts.com, and Mission Log Gene-ology is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment.
On the next Gene-ology, Runaway Home.
Special thanks to consulting producers Matt Esposito, Tom Kozak, Mike Richards, Mike Schabel, and Paul Shadwell.
We'll be back next week with more of your favorite programs. This concludes our broadcast day.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.